Talking Targaryen, Season 2, House of the Dragon, returns this Sunday, June 16th. This is going to be a look back at Season 1. Initially, I was thinking we'd actually watch my recap. So we're not going to do that. But if you need a reminder of everything that happened, check out my recap, link in the description, link in the show notes. But as an assignment, I had Adam and Daniel, who are on with me, I had them rewatch it, so they're all caught up. And this will be us ruminating on that first season. I'm Gil, by the way, and like I mentioned, there's Daniel.
Hey.
And Adam.
Hello.
Yeah,
We're
Daniel's
all brothers.
We're brothers.
I think
that's
that's
right.
like a nice hook. It gets people interested.
One of my critiques for the first episode of House of the Dragon is it did feel a little exposition-y. It was kind of clunky like that. Gil, we've been brothers for what? Ever since the beginning of this podcast, Talking Targaryen? But you guys rewatched my recap, so you're all caught up on everything that happened in Season 1. We're going to dive into our little retrospective in a minute here. But I just want to say stay tuned, because at the end of this episode, we'll make some announcements. We'll talk about how Talking Targaryen is going to look this season. Even Adam and Daniel don't know what it's going to look like. Is it even happening? I mean, it is. Spoiler alert, yes. So make sure you're subscribed. But let's start with Adam. Take me back 3 or 4 years ago. Game of Thrones is in the rear view. You're trying as hard as you can to move on with your life. And suddenly you hear a little inkling. You hear that there's this new show, Blood Moon, coming out. We start a podcast about it. We get 2 episodes in. And then HBO announces, we're canceling Blood Moon. Naomi Watts was in it. And instead, we're making a show about the Targaryens called House of the Dragon. Walk me through the emotions of all that. How did you feel coming up to this show? What were your expectations? Were they met, exceeded? What's the opposite of exceeded, Daniel? Go. Yeah, you don't even know.
Yeah.
Adam, go ahead.
Unseated.
Daniel's normally the cupbearer, but we're recording remotely. That's one spoiler for the end of this episode. We're often going to be... Well, now, Adam, we have to bear our own cups.
I've been bearing my own cup since I don't even know how long.
Hey, Adam, take me back.
Okay, so like
wait, hold on. Now take me back.
It was several years ago. I was still getting over the pain.
Oh wait, like every episode of House of the Dragon, we have to awkwardly mention how long it's been.
Gil, we've known each other for what? 5 years at least since Game of Thrones ended.
All right, take me back. Do it already.
All right. I was probably in the top 0.01% of disappointed people after Game of Thrones. And unlike the plebs or the mainstream news.
Normies.
Normies is the word I was looking for. I wasn't just like, oh yeah, it was a good show, but the finale ruined it. I thought it was a good show until the end of season 4, and then it was just a constant downhill struggle. I know that's not like a very unique opinion, but it at least says, okay, you're someone who was really into it.
Well, based on the comments, it does seem more unique than I realized. Like we talked about on the live stream the other week, when we began Talking Targaryen, by talking about how disappointed we were by the finale of Game of Thrones, we spoke in a lot of we terms. Like, yeah, I know none of us really liked the ending of Game of Thrones. Like, and somebody in the comments is like, who's nobody? Who's we? I love the ending. We got a lot of that kind of sentiment. This is Talking Targaryen has a lot of negative reviews. Saulcast had none. Literally, I don't think there's a single negative review on iTunes. And if you're negative on something, people really don't like that. And there are people that apparently were a fan of the way Game of Thrones wrapped up. I was so worried about that last season. I don't even know if you realize this, Adam, but I cut a lot of your rants out, especially early on. I cut a lot of what you were saying out because I was so worried about bothering people. But here's a spoiler for the end of this episode in terms of announcements. I'm letting Adam off the leash. He can say whatever he wants.
I'm going to be rabid.
Is what you would say.
Yeah.
You were planning to let him off the leash.
I do remember with our Saulcast, our Better Call Saul podcast, you did have to cut down a lot of the stuff I was saying after I had surgery and was taking pain medication.
Yeah, you can go back.
I was alternating like between ranting like a lunatic and then like falling asleep during your mid conversation.
Yeah, if you it was a really bizarre episode because you just had back surgery, and then anyone watching has no idea why this was the case, but we were on a farm for some reason. And we recorded outside. You could see us sitting on the farm, and the sun was going down. So by the end of the episode, it's pure darkness.
Yeah.
And you'll just see, you're like, and another thing, and then it just cuts because I cut out your rant.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much that you were being negative, but you were repeating yourself so much.
Yeah. Well, I have this problem where I feel like people aren't listening to me, so I just keep restating the same thing over and over.
I wonder where you got that from.
Regardless, I felt like a scorned lover where it's deep down you're secretly still pining after this thing. And I was still pining after the world of Westeros and that the universe that George R. R. Martin created. I still wanted to understand every aspect of the lore that I could. Even to this day, I still really hope that he finishes the series, even though part of me wants to say, you know what, I don't even care anymore, as a way to like stick it to him. But I can't deny the fact that deep down I love this universe and I just want more content, quality content.
Game of Thrones to you is Viserys, and then you are Daemon. And this is like the scene where Daemon comes back to the funeral for Laena. He hasn't seen Viserys in 10 years. And Viserys says, Daemon, come home. You know, you can join the court. I want you to join. And he goes, I don't need anything. And he walks away. But you know, deep down, he still wants Viserys' attention and approval.
Yeah, he wants his approval and he cares about him.
It's a very Jimmy McGill, Chuck. It's a very Jimmy Chuck sort of relationship. That's one thing I noticed. The more Better Call Saul references we can make, the better. All right, Adam, keep going.
It's always better to subdivide your already limited audience into an even smaller subset and to alienate those who aren't part of it.
Let's add in Sliders references also.
Yeah, that'll definitely get them.
So when I heard, regardless of, you know, which spin-off they were talking about, which prequel, I would say when I heard that they weren't going through with, was it Blood Moon?
That was the working title and the name of our podcast. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was ever officially decided on.
When I heard that one was canceled, I was like, see, this just goes to show, like, they can't pull it together. They don't know what they're doing. Like, they're never going to recover from how bad that series was.
Yeah, though apparently the original Game of Thrones pilot was, I think, reshot, at least heavily re-edited. They did a lot of rework to get it right before it went to air.
Yeah. Well, and it wasn't even necessarily the strongest start to a series.
Yeah, we kind of give it the
retrospect,
pass.
I like the episode, but I had to rewatch the first couple of episodes. I had multiple false starts with the show where someone gets me to finally watch it, or I watch it with them. I watch an episode or two. I felt kind of bored. I didn't get hooked. Then so much time had passed that I had to start from the beginning again, just so I remembered what was going on. So it was only on the third pass that I finally got hooked.
Yeah, and I think we give the show a pass for that. Like, for the longest time, I would think I'm the problem. I'm stupid. I should be able to keep track of all the characters from episode 1. Yes, I wasn't that entertained, but I should watch it anyway until I become entertained by it. But maybe that's a problem with the first episode. Maybe it should have grabbed us right from the beginning. Like Breaking Bad, you watch that first episode, you're like, I have to see where this is going.
Yeah. So I'm hesitant to say something like that because too many TV shows nowadays don't give the audience enough credit. And so they use cheap tricks to get you hooked and to get you to keep binge watching, or they over explain things. They don't leave any room for subtlety. So in the end, I think I'd rather a show air toward the way early Game of Thrones did. But it does seem like maybe they could have hooked people a little better from the start. But you can't argue with the results, though. In the end, it was the biggest show on TV at the time, and it had just like...
Yeah, HBO doesn't need us to be like, 15 years ago,
yeah,
you guys could have done better work on that pilot.
Yeah. And if I am going to levy any criticism against the show, I'll reserve it for the last 4 seasons, and especially the last 3. So once I heard these things going on about like a possible continuation or like a possible extra show going on in the universe, I wanted to say that I didn't care about it or that I knew it was going to be terrible, and I'm not even going to dignify it with a watch. And then I remember my opinion evolved to be like, well, I know Gil's going to watch it, so I'll wait for him to watch it and then tell me if I should watch it. But I'm not going to watch it from the beginning with everyone else. Then you said you wanted to do a podcast about it, and I decided I would watch from
And you're
the
like,
get-go,
whoa.
just like you.
You sure about this?
And I was, because here we are.
Yeah.
And so it did. Even now, I'm still approaching the show cautiously, and it does have some flaws. But overall, it's solid, and if it can maintain this quality through the whole series, it'll end up being a great series. And it's more likely to do that than Game of Thrones was, because at least this is a complete story.
You're like a dog sniffing a fire hydrant or sniffing anything new, where like they'll be interested for a second, they're really into it, and then suddenly they get scared for no reason. They jump away from it, and they cautiously approach again. So you're right now, you're on your reapproach for season 2.
They start to raise that back leg.
You haven't claimed it yet, but you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so the TLDR for all that, I don't know why it took you 10 minutes to say all that. I was a little
because
skeptical.
No one was listening.
I was a little skeptical going in. I wanted to like it. I watched it. I really liked it.
I didn't want to like it.
I didn't want to like it, but I did.
See, you weren't listening.
Like,
Why
would you not want to like something?
Because I was so angry at the show. It's like if someone who's mean to you ends up being really good at something. Do you want to just outright admit, like, okay, yeah, I don't like them, but I have to admit that they're better at video games than me?
Just tell Daniel you like it.
Adam's story. Okay, I thought Adam wanted to want to not like it, but he couldn't not want to not like it. I thought that was the issue.
Daniel, try to move the mic more to the side. You're popping like crazy.
Well, I feel like her hand was hitting it, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, try that.
How's this?
It seemed pretty good so far. All right, go back to what you were saying.
Well, I thought...
Actually, you know what? Don't go back to that.
It's just a bunch of nonsense.
I thought he wanted to not like it.
It wasn't nonsense because Adam ended up wanting to like it.
All right.
But I think he wanted to not want to like it.
In the end, Adam, you liked it, and now you're cautiously reapproaching season 2. If it keeps up this quality, it could surpass Game of Thrones for you.
If it maintains this quality through the series finale, then on the whole, it will be a better show than Game of Thrones. That said, one fault of the show is that at its best moments, it's still far below Game of Thrones' best moments. And maybe part of that is on my end. Like, I just don't feel the same investment I had before. Maybe, this show doesn't have as many heroic characters or characters I find that likable or ones I can root for that much.
If any, to be honest.
Yeah, like I'll say, I like the character of Daemon, and I think I like a lot of his motivations, but I can't like him that much because, like, unlike, contrary to a character like Jon Snow, he's done so many bad things that he's a mixed bag. And I can still root for him and think maybe I want him to win over the Greens or something. But I'm not getting that, like, personally invested feeling the way you get when you're like a rabid fan of a sports team. Not that I would know what that feels like.
Yeah, Damon's a jerk. He killed his wife because he doesn't like her and because he wanted to remarry. And
yeah, she was kind of mean to him, so.
Well, after years of neglect. And then he spooked her horse and knocked her and paralyzed her.
It was an accident.
I think I meant to go back and re-listen to our episode about that episode because I remember arguing with you where you're like, it's not clear he did it on purpose. It's not, I don't know.
I don't know. How can you know that spooking someone's horse is going to get them killed?
Yeah, I did notice in the recap, Gil, you just came out and said that he murders her.
Yeah, he did murder her. I mean, he also picked up a large stone afterward and walked over and to put her out of her misery. She was paralyzed.
To put her out
it was
of her
an act
misery.
of mercy.
Adam, I made the comparison that it reminded me of, remember that Quentin Tarantino video where there's like a paparazzi following him?
Oh, yeah, I remember
then,
this.
Like Tarantino like punches him so the camera shakes.
Yeah.
But it looks like he just flexes. And
yeah,
so
you don't actually see a collision. It almost looks like he just like bent the air with his bicep.
And then the camera goes crazy.
Yeah.
That's how that scene was shot. It was so unclear exactly what happened, but the common interpretation is that Damon spooked the horse, so it knocked her off it. She was paralyzed, and then she was like, "I knew you were a coward. Can't finish." And he's like, "Really?" And then he
Well,
picks up a big rock and turns around.
Look, in real life, let alone in the world of Game of Thrones, she's basically hitting a nerve at, like as deep as you can get with him.
Well, once she was paralyzed, and she's like, "I'm dying anyway, so I want to go out by pointing out his biggest insecurity."
Or his smallest one. if you
Also,
will.
she didn't want to be left. She wanted to get him to kill her. She didn't want to be like left there to starve to death, paralyzed.
I'm not really saying that.
Yeah,
she
be
deserved
careful
this.
because
I started all this. Oh yeah, I know people don't understand sarcasm at all, and it's gotten me into trouble before. I think that Damon has done a lot of evil things, including killing his wife and neglecting her.
That's why
Let me
he's
be
a
on the
mixed
record.
bag.
I
He's done all
think
these evil
murder
things.
Is wrong. That said, I find him kind of like a cool in other ways and
Well,
somewhat likable. But
yeah, of
But
course,
the
yeah.
bottom line is like Jon Snow. He was like you could root for him through like all the way till the end, almost. until
Even when he
became,
kills his wife.
A weak. Oh yeah, he did kill his wife. Well, they weren't married, but he killed his girlfriend.
Oh yeah.
But like until his character became a brainless, just nothing guy who would just say, "You're my queen. I don't want it." Before that point, he was like one of the most likable, ethical characters you could have ever had on a TV show. He was basically like Ned Stark, like reincarnated.
right.
Like
Well, you
the
have
point
Kristen
where the
Cole.
show-
He's like the same.
no, he isn't.
He also says my queen.
That's true.
The point where Game of Thrones really gripped me, and nowadays this is kind of normal, but Game of Thrones was innovative when you had this character Ned, he's the main character and he's heroic, and he's gonna stand up for what's right, and then by the end of the season, his head is on a pike.
Right.
Like that was fairly unprecedented, and that really hooked me. And it in retrospect, it kind of pulled this double purpose of there's like this empty void after he's gone, and you're like, well, who is like the righteous, moral person for me to root for now? And it ended up being Jon Snow, and so all that energy that was built up around Ned kind of carried over to him. And
It was also it was kind of shared. I mean, Robb Stark. I mean, really all the Starks to varying degrees. I was really into Arya's story for a while, especially since I'm very partial to revenge and her just listing out all the people she's going to kill one day before going to bed every night. It was awesome.
It's true, but they still had these elements that made them more obviously flawed and somewhat less honorable. I would say honor is the thing that Jon Snow had more than most of the other characters, and that's kind of where the torch was passed from Ned onward. So I guess what I found really appealing was having this one honorable character in this otherwise like cesspool of a world where everyone's constantly scheming and backstabbing. And I would say those other characters you mentioned, they were still overall pretty likable and you could root for them, but they didn't have that same core element of honor where they really try to stick to their word.
Yeah, remember when Robb
and when John
married
went back on his word, when
Yeah.
John,
Yeah.
disobeyed things from the Night's Watch and stuff, it tore him apart inside.
Yeah.
Whereas what you're saying, Robb married, for love when he was already committed to the Frey's daughter, and you can't really blame him. But that's not something Ned would have done.
And it wasn't.
And then,
I mean,
sorry, go ahead.
there were a lot of characters though that Game of Thrones got us to care about a lot more. It wasn't just the honorable characters. I mean, characters like Jaime Lannister, like he does horrible things at the beginning,
Mhm.
and you eventually really, really like care about him and love
It
him
was
as
like
a
a
character.
redemption arc and an effort
Yeah.
for him to regain his honor. I do think there's something especially appealing about the concept of honor in this universe.
Because it's a universe that so makes the other path so much more appealing, right? Everybody is scheming. So if you're not scheming, it's almost by default, you are at a disadvantage because that's one tool you're not using that everybody else is
Yeah.
using.
So
and
in
it's this
House of the
one
Dragon,
semblance that
so we do have an honorable character. We had the Lionel Strong.
Yeah, I do remember thinking Lionel seemed like so. Otto was originally hand to Viserys, and Lionel took his place. And Otto was very clearly trying to put Alicent on the throne with Viserys. Like as soon as Viserys lost his wife, he was like, Alicent, why don't you go give him comfort and wear one of your mother's dresses? So he arranged for the two of them to fall in love. When Lionel took the position, it at least seemed like he was trying to be objective, like as objective as possible. Even the one episode where Viserys was agonizing over what to do. He's like, do I make Rhaenyra marry Laenor or do I let her marry whoever she wants? He's sitting there drunk, and everyone keeps coming up to him being like, you should have her marry me. I'm awesome. Have her marry my son. He's awesome. And then Lionel comes over, and Viserys is like, let me guess. Rhaenyra should marry your son because he's a wonderful man and he's awesome. And he's like, no, I was going to say she should marry Laenor. So he actually suggested something that wasn't, at least on the face of it, in his self-interest.
right. That's someone you can root for.
And then he got burned alive. And I was
Right,
like,
well,
damn, that sucks.
And that's what made characters like Ned Stark and then Jon Snow so appealing and so captivating, where you just need to see what happens next, and it feels like a huge loss when they're in danger or when something, when they're killed. And I think for this show to have a chance at surpassing or at least tying with Game of Thrones in terms of its like peak addictiveness and meaning for me, they got to give me someone like that to root for. Now that might just it's probably not the story that they're trying to tell, and so it might not have that. And it's not a fault of the story or a fault of the show, but in terms of how I feel about it, that's what's going to decide if I end up looking back on this series the way I looked at Game of Thrones first 4 seasons.
So that being said, though, I'm pretty excited to cheer for Rhaenyra after I rewatched the end of the last episode of season 1. And I mean, once watching her son get killed and her reaction, I think like it's a different type of character to root for, but I think there's a lot to get invested in.
I mean, there's
so far
a
that's
lot
how the
to
show
get into with a good revenge story. That's another addictive thing for sure.
Well, and that's the way the show is working right now, is that even if at the core you have problems with virtually every character, from moment to moment, you can empathize with what they're trying to achieve, what they want, or the fate they're trying to avoid. So, yes, like I'm rooting for Rhaenyra in that specific instance. I feel that anger, at least toward Aemond. But I have to see past, like I think I said this on one of our podcasts last season, her and Daemon, they fake Laenor's death by burning a guard alive. And I'm like, I can't look past it. I'm like, I like Rhaenyra, but you just killed a guy. Like, you're a jerk. A couple of jerks got married, Daemon and Rhaenyra.
You just burned someone alive, which is probably one of the most horrific ways to die.
We don't know he was alive for
We don't know he was alive.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. Yeah, that's true. Either way, they sacrificed an innocent life for their own, scheming and benefit. That said, they could argue, well, we're trying to hold the realm together, and if this one life is going to help us save thousands or tens of thousands of lives in Westeros, it's worth it. And they're just doing the calculus. But it seems more like it's a sort of a personal vendetta they have about securing the throne, which they feel is rightfully theirs. Then again, if they think Westeros depends on this orderly procession of like the hereditary monarchy, then they are still doing what might be the honorable thing, but it just doesn't feel like that's what motivated them emotionally.
Well, it's not the honorable thing, right? Like Rhaenyra does clearly care about the good of the realm, and she keeps talking about that a lot, and she is very focused on that throughout this conflict. But she's clearly not honor motivated. I think that is a big difference.
That's fair. Yeah, not honor, but I guess I would say she's in some ways motivated by the desire for the orderly and lawful, like, rule. Like,
well, and broader than that,
rule.
Adam, Aegon's dream, the Song of Ice and Fire.
Right.
She believes that it is her job to unite the realm, And in the finale of season 1, she's very reluctant to start war, and it seems like she's willing to let Alicent have the throne, or let Aegon have the throne, if that's what it takes to unite the realm.
Yeah.
She says to Daemon, like, remember our grander purpose here. It's not about us being on the throne. It's about holding the realm together. And he grabs her by the throat. And he's like, dreams didn't put us on the throne. Dragons did.
It's kind of easy to forget that that's going on in the background and that that's actually a major motivation for all of this. If Rhaenyra truly believes in this prophecy, the Song of Ice and Fire, then that could justify almost anything she does to try to preserve a Targaryen on the throne. They're fictional characters, so I can't actually say what ultimately motivates them, but it's hard to separate that from the feeling of it's kind of a convenient excuse to pursue the thing she wants anyway.
Well, not when she seems to be taking a back seat and saying, I don't know that I'm going to go fight Alicent. If her and Aegon taking care of the throne right now holds the realm together. So at least that's one instance where it appears that she's being unselfish. Now, I'm sure that when she goes out in season 2 and is in this fury over Luke's death, I'm sure she's going to use the Song of Ice and Fire as one of the reasons why she's doing this. Alicent is also doing it to an extent. She doesn't know all the details of it, but when Viserys died and said those final words, which she mistook to be him renouncing Rhaenyra as his successor and instead saying it should be Prince Daemon or Prince Aegon, she's taking his dying wish as her motivator there, right? So both of them have something greater than them that they're using as a quote unquote excuse for what they're doing.
Well, and I'm not even sure Rhaenyra really wants, at least earlier, I'm not even sure she really wants to be queen. Like, well, maybe I'm forgetting parts of season 1, but she has like a lot of things that she wants, right? She wants to be with like Harwin Strong. What's his name? Right? Like
Strong,
she wants to be with Harwin Strong. She generally wants to be free. She wants to live her own life. She is motivated by the Song of Ice and Fire, and now she's motivated by her son's death. I'm not sure these are just excuses to be queen, unless we've seen other things from her in season 1 that shows.
We've seen moments, like especially the one that sticks out to me is when Rhaenys gives her those words of discouragement. She's scorned because she really should have been queen. The only reason she isn't is because the male gets the throne. So when it passed on, even though she was the eldest descendant to King Jaehaerys, Viserys took it. So now she's the queen who never was. She tells Rhaenyra, you're never going to be queen. Viserys is going to remarry. They're going to have a son. That son will be king. Otherwise, the realm will tear itself apart. Men would rather burn the realm down than let a queen sit on the throne. And she says that she will change the order. That's the order of things. She says, I'm going to change the order. So there's definitely an element of motivation of I want to rise up and change this realm for the better. But I think like everybody else, it's complicated, right? It'll change from one moment to another. But in terms of a hero, so what does keep you watching? I think it's what I said earlier, where moment to moment, you can empathize with what the characters want, even though sometimes they're not quite sure. Really, I think Daemon's a really interesting character because we're introduced to him sitting on the throne, which is a big no-no when you're not king. I think the Hand is allowed to sit on the throne as well. And you think he covets the throne. I even said that in my recap because that's at least the perception to everyone around him. But you kind of get the feeling that he just wants Viserys' attention. Like what was the point of everything in episode 2 where he announces that he's going to wed Mysaria, he stole Balon's egg and was going to put it in their baby's cradle. They weren't even really having a baby and they're not actually engaged. But he did it all just to provoke Viserys. He just wants his attention. I think one of the things that was so appealing about Better Call Saul is that the characters were so complicated that sometimes we didn't know why they do what they do. It's the same thing on this show, but the next level, sometimes even the characters don't know why they do what they do, right? It's complicated.
I think he wants some kind of, I don't think he understands it on a conscious level, but he'd rather get negative attention from Viserys than none at all, because it at least means he's significant somehow to him.
Which I would so like to understand that better, because you look at Viserys and with us being a fly on the wall for everything he did, and we see how not great he is at being king. Why is that the guy you want attention from? And I feel like we'd have to know more about Daemon's childhood. Like maybe he didn't get enough attention from his father, so Viserys has kind of become his new father figure. He wants attention from him. And then once Viserys is dead, or even before that, once he has a falling out with Viserys, he kind of reignites his quote unquote love for Rhaenyra. Maybe she becomes like does he really love her, or is being with her the closest he can get to being with his brother in terms of having his attention?
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. She like she's almost a proxy for him.
Right. And it might have even started, it's a mix of she's a proxy slash it's a way to, I don't know, again, get attention from Viserys or get closer
Yeah.
to him if I marry her. But once Viserys is gone, being with Rhaenyra is the closest thing.
Um, one, I think it's really interesting. You said that Viserys was not really a very good king, as if that's kind of obvious. But I think it's up for debate.
All right. So, I mean, to me, here's my case for why he's not a good king is that he worries too much about personal matters. So, for example, he made the same mistake as Robb Stark. He married for love when there was actually an important marriage in front of him. Like in theory, he probably should have married Lena, the sea snake's daughter. By not marrying her, he turned the sea snake into an enemy. And he set a bad example for his daughter. He needs Rhaenyra to marry for strategic purposes.
Now,
But
And
now,
leaving aside that specific decision, just look at the events that happened after his death. Like clearly he screwed something up majorly.
right.
I
Now,
agree.
you can give me 1 second, Adam, but you can also, it is complicated because on the one hand, this goes back to what I was saying earlier, where you can really empathize with what the characters are doing. You feel this satisfaction of screw the realm. I named Rhaenyra heir, and she's going to be heir. But even when he says that, he's not really saying that for logical reasons. It's an emotional outburst. He's saying it because he wants to reconcile with her, not because he's thought through the implications of should she be heir? Is that the right decision as king? He makes a lot of emotional decisions. I don't think he thinks things through very much in a calculated, objective way.
I think that if you look at the events, he was overall a good ruler, but a bad king. In the sense that if you think of a ruler as someone who just oversees the course of events, when he's sitting there lamenting, like, will people write about me? I didn't start any great wars or anything like that. Like a king who starts no wars is already probably in the top 5%. You know, the so like as a ruler, like while he actually had power and his capacities, I think he maintained stability. The problem is he wasn't able to set up a situation where that stability could last. I even think his decision to name Rhaenyra as his successor was not, even though it did seem to come from an emotional place, um, it wasn't totally an invalid decision. The problem is he didn't have the actual physical power and mental power to back it up or reinforce it. And we can't forget that he was being systematically poisoned for like
Well,
a decade.
well, the interesting thing is that is not explicit fact. That's sort of a
Yeah.
fan theory, and it's also something that we were feeling pretty early on, where he's basically Viserys is deteriorating. He's disintegrating before our eyes throughout the entire season. I remember we came up with a lot of loving metaphors for it. We said that by the end, he was basically like the Voldemort thing that you see on the subway, on the train in
Yeah.
Harry Potter, or we had a few others of what he was turning into. But you get the feeling that maybe the maesters that are supposed to be taking care of him are intentionally making him ill. Part of that is we know that Otto is angling to have his family line on the throne. That's why he gets Alicent. He gets Viserys to fall in love with Alicent, and he moves to have Aegon on the throne.
Not just
And
that, but Otto has connections to the Maesters because he runs Old Town, right?
Yeah, which is where the Maesters are located, right?
The
You know,
Citadel. Yeah.
maybe Viserys should get a second opinion.
Well, the funny thing is they talk about that. Like, there's a scene where Daemon and Rhaenyra are talking, and they're like, I wonder if our Maesters might do a better job. And then Alicent walks in and says, hey, how's everybody doing in here? And sort of cuts off that conversation. There's one scene where someone's like, we have this tea that I think might help. We could try a different course of treatment. And the Grand Maester's like, no, no, no. Viserys loves the leeches. They've always treated him very well.
At some point in your recap, you said something to the with the phrase like they apply maggots to his infected necrotic
Yeah, it was
foot.
like, as maggots feast on his necrotic flesh.
But so, like that is a major handicap that, in some ways you could argue that he let it happen to him because he did have these opportunities to exert his power and say, no, I do want someone else to take a look at this, or I do want to try that tea. But on the other hand, how's he supposed to do that if he's already under the influence of whatever they've been poisoning him with? And I know you said it's kind of just a fan theory that it was going on at all, or that it was going on for as long as it seemed to be going on. But I would say I pretty much believe it. I would say it's more than a fan theory. There's tons of breadcrumbs intentionally there to give us that impression.
Right. I didn't want to demean it and say it's probably not true. I just mean it hasn't been explicitly stated. We don't know it, but it's an impression we have.
Yeah. But so I think, considering the period of stability that he did create during his reign, followed by a lot of weakness and poor planning, and clouded judgment, it's hard for me to say that makes him a bad king, because it's something that like a traitor was doing to him, and that an enemy, that the people who were supposed to protect him weren't succeeding.
Yeah, I guess I would argue.
Like he had the capacity. He had the capacity to be a good king, and it was sort of taken away from him.
But he even said, Viserys even says that he was never really tested. Like, I think all he had to do was be a man, and that kept the realm together. That was it.
In Futurama, they said if you do things right, people won't be sure you've done anything at all.
I remember thinking in that scene, he says, if I were tested. I think he was tested. He just didn't realize it.
Yeah.
But even a little example, but when Luke or Jace, I forget who was actually wielding the knife, but when they cut out Aemon's eye, they have permanently removed his eyeball from his skull, or at least damaged it enough that they have to take it out. That's pretty bad. You can't just walk in the room and say, I want everyone to apologize and get along and we're moving on. And that's it. Like, I think a really great king, I'm not saying he should have bent to Alicent's will. She was like, I want one of Rhaenyra's children's eyes as retribution.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done that, but I think a great king would have found a way to handle that matter, to truly settle it or move it toward settling. And
I agree, but at that point, they were already screwing with him.
But that was brewing for years, that problem. That issue, that rift in his family had been brewing for about 10 years.
That's true. Okay, I think you make a very fair point, which is these aren't just familial personal conflicts, because this is a monarchy where family connections, where the entire state depends on it. So yeah, I think if you don't resolve those issues forcefully and in a sustainable way, you are failing at some of your kingly responsibilities. But I just don't. I want him to get enough credit for the fact that he did have like several decades of stability under his rule, which, I mean, even in our real world, we can't get that. Right. So
I do
like but that's pretty lame. Like, no good wars of conquest or anything.
No, it's not cool.
Sorry,
it's not cool. You wouldn't make a show about it, but that's what allows people to like get wealthier and live better lives over time, is that kind of stability and not having to look over their shoulder and worry about the next war.
Yeah, I think there's like a couple of themes that are colliding here. One of them is people who aren't necessarily bad people that are in a role that they are just not necessarily fit for. Viserys, I don't know that he's the worst guy in the world. I don't think he's the best king. And the role literally swallows him up. He, in the first episode, when he has that
Literally.
sore on his back, that sore on his back, he chalks it up to it's a nick from the Iron Throne. Later in the episode, he cuts his finger on it. So the metaphor is that the throne is literally killing him. Like, it's a role that he is not fit for. There's that. And then there's sort of tradition, and there's all these immaterial things, these external factors that are changing the way people deal with each other. And it's like Rhaenyra and Alicent were great friends. It's expectations of the realm that have torn them apart. Alicent expects that Rhaenyra will have no choice but to target her children in order to shore up her own succession. And so Alicent is sort of preemptively spiteful toward Rhaenyra because she knows that she's going to inevitably be in Rhaenyra's crosshairs. And it turns the two against each other. So it's sort of these immaterial things. There's the role of king that over time kills Viserys. There's the expectations of the realm, the traditions that succession always goes to the male. Those things are killing these characters. It's starting war and turning them against each other. And then, of course, you have these familial differences, this hatred between the children that is inevitably going to hurt civilians. These people that are just trying to live their lives. Like, Adam, you were talking about how when there are no wars and no calamities going on, that's when people become wealthy and they have good lives. So there are these civilians out there that we don't deal with too much, and their lives hang in the balance because Alicent and Rhaenyra's children and Alicent and Rhaenyra themselves can't figure out how to get along. I remember even in the final episode, or the second to last episode, Rhaenys is one character where she hasn't really done anything wrong. She's somebody you can root for. But then she gets on her dragon, and in the middle of Aegon's coronation, she blasts, the beast beneath the boards. She blasts through the floor and probably killed dozens of civilians there.
Right. And nothing else she can do will redeem her.
Like,
did she have another way out of that dungeon?
That's what I'm not sure of. Could she have just quietly left on that dragon, or did she have to bust through the floorboards?
I think she had no
wish
choice.
I wish something like that was not ambiguous. Like I don't see why it should be left up to the imagination. Did she knowingly and intentionally kill all these people or not?
Like, I'm just imagining I'm standing there in the crowd. I don't even want to be here. I don't care who's king. Just leave me out of it. But I have to go to the coronation at the Dragon Pit. You're making me go somewhere that there are monsters. I didn't even know dragons existed, to be honest. I never saw one as a kid. I heard about them. They're dinosaurs who breathe fire. And we're going to go stand over them. I'm standing there like I just want to go home. Like, we don't have TV or podcasts back
and you're
then.
like, man, I don't even know where the bathroom is.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I don't know how long the coronation is. So
you haven't had water for hours because
you're
worried you'll... Yeah.
So I'm in discomfort. I'm thirsty, and I still have to go to the bathroom for some reason anyway. I don't even know where the liquid's coming from, and I have to stand the whole time. And so now my back hurts, and I just want to get out of there. And suddenly I'm flung 25 feet in the air. My head crashes into the ground. I'm barely conscious. I look up and I see Rhaenys on her dragon with this smirk of like, "I bested you, Alicent." I see her smile, proud, and then I die. Now,
those are the stories that get overlooked, like when you just focus on the powerful people.
Well, I tend to be overly focused on those details. Like, if I'm watching a Fast and Furious movie and they like crush an SUV just on the side as part of an action scene, like, you just killed a family probably. And the rest of the movie, I'm just distracted by it. And I'm yelling at the theater like, "Are we not going to talk about that SUV?"
Okay, just to circle back briefly. I'm going to revise what I was saying about Viserys. I think he's still a mixed bag when it comes to, whether or not he's a good king. But one of the things I liked about him was he didn't make a big deal about legacy. And what we've seen, at least in Game of Thrones and often in this show, is people who care a lot about their legacy end up doing so at the expense of the freedom and peace of other people. And so to me, when someone's like, I want to strengthen my legacy and I want to start this war that may be unnecessary because it's going to be like this great victory for me, that's something it's hard for me to get behind, even if it's entertaining.
Right. I think he
In his
cared.
case,
He thought about it in moments, right? Like, of course, there's a scene where he's, I never
yeah.
fought any great wars, etc. But I think his core motivation, he believed in the Song of Ice and Fire. I think he truly thought he was doing what's best for the realm. And then, of course, he would get excited about, like, I remember in my recap, I talked about how he's not paying attention to the growing triarchy in the Stepstones because he was excited about his son's second name day.
Yeah. Well, so what I think is going on is his he kind of disregarded the concept of legacy in a way that I found kind of appealing because of how rare that is for the powerful people in this world. And you see the way he spends time building up his model of King's Landing, and like it seemed like he
The
really had a
model
love
of Valyria.
the old Valyria. Yeah, thank you. And he really like loved the history. He loves the realm. And he believed in the Song of Ice and Fire, and so he wanted to protect the realm, and he was afraid of what could happen to it. What he didn't really piece together is that protecting his legacy could be a necessary step to try to prevent that prophecy, or to try to protect the realm in the future. So he didn't care about legacy on a just like raw emotional level, but he could have been very powerful and succeeded better than most if he on a rational level said, okay, I'm not doing this for me, but it actually is necessary to protect the legacy and to make sure Targaryen sits on the throne and to make sure there isn't a power vacuum when I die.
But he was, I mean, he was consumed by his dream of having a son. Now, to some extent, he like needed a son for the stability of the realm, but he also like really felt that that was important. That was his legacy to him. I think maybe if he wasn't so consumed by that dream, maybe he would have. I don't know if they do this in Westeros, like adopted an heir or something like that, like they did in the Roman Empire. I don't know if he had other options if he wasn't so consumed.
Well,
I
other
feel like
options would be
they
make
wouldn't
Daemon
accept
heir
that.
for some reason. For example, you would go. I mean, even Jaehaerys didn't have any sons because they were both killed. So they started going down the line. Okay, let's go nieces, nephews.
I guess at
Yeah,
some point, if he was gonna say we don't care about it being a male anymore, he needed to full on
yeah.
commit to Rhaenyra and do it in a strong way with a show of force, and like basically immediately kill anyone who tried to
So
fight that decision.
yeah, so that's another test he failed because he was consumed by that dream, right? If he gave up on the dream of having a son, he would have decided 10 years earlier to plan for Rhaenyra to be heir.
Right. And I think that's the complexity is, okay, you could say, was it a prideful thing where he wanted a son so he could claim, like, I got a son, made him heir, I did the right thing? Or did he truly believe that the dream was a dragon dream, a premonition? So he felt this is essentially the word of my God telling me I need to do this? Or was he having a recurring dream and he wanted to believe it was a dragon dream because he wanted to put a stake in the ground and say, I am historically important. This is my legacy. I'm a prophet, essentially. I'm like Aegon the Conqueror. So it's complicated. And I
So
think,
this is
go ahead.
sorry, this is what's wrong with like a world where you have mystical things, right? Where there's magic. Like, how do you know what's a vision of the future or just like a dream you had? Like, it just makes it impossible.
But that's the complexity that makes these characters so interesting. Like, even if you don't have a hero you're rooting for, you have characters that are so complicated and just interesting to watch. Viserys is a slow motion car wreck you can't look away from.
Speaking of a slow motion car wreck that you can't look away from, I know that the Song of Ice and Fire is very important to this plot and to the story of Viserys. But if they are going to deviate from the books in any way, it should be related to that. There's no way the audience can take that threat seriously after the way they bungled it for Game of Thrones. Like the White Walkers had so much buildup and so much mystery, and they were so scary, and uh, I just wanted to know everything I could about them. And then over the course of like 2 episodes, they became a nothing. and they became a joke. They made a big deal about the knife, right? Viserys's knife.
The dagger.
Yeah, the dagger, because
Wasn't
it
a
would
knife,
go
it was a
on to
dagger.
be... Well, you got that like hateful comment out of the
I
way.
cut my steak with a knife, okay? This is Valyrian steel. It's a dagger.
I use Valyrian steel for like daggers as my shish kebabs.
That's why he's missing 3 fingers.
Yeah. It's okay. The leeches will take care of it. Anyway, that they should do everything they can to avoid any references to the White Walkers or to the threat in the north that will one day come down. As cool as it would have been to be able to use that in this story, they've poisoned it. And all it does is take me out of the show and remind me of how terrible that plot line went. So even if it's important to this story, they should just change it. It's too late now, but like when they showed that dagger as if it was significant.
Smoke and mirrors. That's what they should call it.
That actually sounds kind of cool.
That's what it ended up being.
Yeah. So when the camera kind of highlighted the dagger and tried to make it seem significant, totally took me out of it. It felt like an insult to me, as if I don't remember how
I
awful
wish,
that thing
just for
ended up
you,
being.
when he showed the dagger, like you'd see reflections in the dagger, like of the future, like you see Jon Snow and
or like
Arya,
some blue eyes.
just to
You
really
see the
stick it to you.
Dothraki running into the
Right. Oh yeah, and what you see there is basically the end of the Dothraki.
She kind of forgot about the iron.
Yeah. She failed geography. God, I it's easy to forget how bad it was. Like the show itself didn't just turn into absolute garbage, but even the little lines in the script, which weren't in the show, they weren't dialogue, but they're like, I don't know, she can't remember which way to get somewhere. Then they just add a line, she failed geography. That was in the narrative description of what's going on in the official script for one of those episodes.
There was a phrase that I remembered that made me laugh yesterday, but you told me you used to listen, was it Bald Move? The podcast, they would cover Game of Thrones. They declared fan bankruptcy.
Fan bankruptcy, yeah. That was when they, it was like very early, I think, in the final season, where they said, like, we are covering this show just to watch the train wreck finish. A podcast that started as like diehard fans, they publicly said, like, we can't get on board with this anymore. We're just covering it just to go down with the ship.
Go ahead, Daniel.
So any reference to that to me is just I'll never. Yeah, it's hard to stop talking about this, but the more time passes, the easier it is to like undersell how offensively bad the show became.
I like that.
I just love
and
that
when I see a reference to the White Walkers, it just gets me angry all over again, and I want them to not touch it with a 10-foot pole anymore.
Adam,
okay,
you told us right before we started recording, you like laid back on your couch and you were like, I just want to make sure you can still hear me okay in the mic. So I'm just picturing you, you're like laying back and anybody walks into your apartment and they just see you like, I can't understate how bad the final season of Game of Thrones was.
Plus, like, it was a little lighter in this room earlier, but now all the lights are off, so I'm just sitting in the dark. And also, I'm not leaning back anymore. I'm hunched forward over my mic, and I caught myself literally wagging my finger as I was ranting before. I'm telling you, I get so angry about this.
You used to get mad if, like, occasionally I would find myself just humming the Game of Thrones theme. Yeah, and you'd just be like, "Why, Gil? Why?"
Yeah. Because I had a problem. Like, I still do, but like, I'm not joking. Like, if it was 2 years after the finale and then something reminded me of Game of Thrones, I would be upset about it for like 2 days, and I'd go down the rabbit holes again, just reading and reminding myself of every little thing that was wrong with it, and there were so many. So anyway, I think the more distance they can create between, I don't know how many more times I can say this, but the more distance they can create between this show and Game of Thrones, and the less they can connect them, the better, especially when it has to do with that plot line, because that was the one they screwed up the worst.
I like the White Walkers thing. I can compartmentalize it. I think it's cool that she's motivated by like the coming apocalypse.
Yeah. Same.
I envy
I
you.
do. I
Mute
do
Adam.
find like it gets wrapped up. Like what actually happened gets wrapped up in a ball in my brain and just put aside somewhere else. Like Adam, I have to sometimes. I spent an entire probably 2 months straight recapping the MCU, so I know what it's like to compartmentalize and be like, I like this stuff. It's good.
Right. I mean, you're recapping it. Your job when you're recapping it is to make sense of everything and tie it together nicely. So I'm sure there's a lot of like glaring inconsistencies and problems, but it doesn't benefit you to really get
Well,
wrapped up in it.
I misunderstood what you said. I thought you were saying my recap has glaring problems.
No.
But somebody did comment. They
No,
said,
my point is your
literally
recaps fix the problems.
just imagine she's pushing up the glasses and she goes, literally every single line in this recap has some piece of misinformation or inaccuracy. Every
Literally
single one.
every line.
Every one.
So if you say Peter Parker is Spider-Man, actually,
Spider-Man is just a
et cetera, et cetera.
moniker he goes by. He is not literally Spider-Man. But I actually do like a lot of the MCU. There's just some recent stuff I haven't been as big of a fan of. And yeah.
Good.
But I do the same thing with the White Walkers, just kind of compartmentalize. And Song of Ice and Fire, I just substitute the word apocalypse.
Look, I feel like
That
I'm
sounds
starting
cool,
to
actually.
feel kind
Aegon's
of-
apocalypse.
That does sound cool. I'm starting to feel kind of isolated here. Like I thought you guys were on my side about how bad that the series became.
No. Hold
And-
on. I'm completely on board with that. Maybe
yeah,
even
but
more
you've
than
just
you.
forgiven them. You've fully forgiven them, and you're just like putting it in the past.
It's different
And-
people.
and like no, but they're trying to ride on. You know how they say
Adam's
like
wagging
they
his
sit on
finger in the air right
the
now.
shoulders of giants. Like, don't reference it. You're acting as if it wasn't terrible, and that's what bothered me in the first place. Like you had Peter Dinklage going out on interviews, and he said people didn't like the finale because all they wanted was to see the pretty white people ride off into the sunset.
Did he actually say that?
That's literally what he said, almost word for word. That's not why people were upset about the finale, first of all. Second of all, that's literally what happened. And Arya was like, I want to go see what's west of Westeros. I'm going to go sail off into the sunrise.
Well, actually, it's funny, Adam, because the first video I ever did on One Take was a review of the Game of Thrones finale. And for some reason, and that was 5 years ago, I think it's still under 200 views. Somebody commented on it today. And I guess I must have complained. I was like, Arya wants to see what's west of Westeros? Is that like a thing that was part of her
that came
character?
out of nowhere.
Hold on.
In
So
the
this is
books,
what-
there's some basis for it, but
Well, I'm late, haha, because this is 5 years late, right? He posted this 6 hours ago. But Arya did have a scene in season 5, I believe, where she said she wanted to know what is west of Westeros.
okay. So she said it once, and suddenly that's like a core dream of hers, and it's who she is as a character.
She said
And
it once in
determines the
passing
rest of her
years ago.
future. Yeah.
Like when I was in
Wait,
third
said
grade, I
under
said
her breath.
when I was
My
in,
point is, go ahead.
in third grade, I said I wanted to be a magician, and my teacher laughed at me. But like if the series finale now is like, and now I'm going to become a magician, and then Daniel will be like, well, in season 2, like 14 seasons ago, his teacher laughed at him when he said he wanted to be a magician. So
Yeah. So they really set it up. So anyway, my point about bringing up the Peter Dinklage quote is just things like that are pretty insulting to the audience, for real, and it's like they're unapologetically acting as if there was significance to the way that show ended, and as if it has any gravitas. And I legitimately find it kind of insulting, and that's the kind of stuff that makes me. I don't know if you could tell I'm a little annoyed about it.
Well, and that wasn't in the book, right? Like in Fire and Blood, the book that forms the basis for House of the Dragon. I don't think then there was no like prophecy of the Song of Ice and Fire, right?
Oh, I actually don't know, but if there wasn't, you're joking, right?
No, I think that's Daniel.
Okay,
Did you
'cause
listen to all like the inside?
If they introduce that, so I've been intentionally avoiding the Fire and Blood, like the book, because I'm trying to experience this fresh. But if they added that in and it wasn't in the book, then it's really unforgivable to me.
Okay, well, okay, here you go. Ready? I got the answer right here. It was not in the book. But here's a quote from showrunner Ryan Condal. that actually came from Martin. He told us very, very early on in the room, just as he does, just casually mentioned the fact that Aegon the Conqueror was a dreamer who saw a vision of the White Walkers coming across the wall and sweeping over the land with cold and darkness.
Okay,
So with his
they
permission,
didn't
of
have
course,
it in
we
the
infused
books.
that.
They heard
go.
something like that, and they're like, "Oh yeah, since the White Walkers were such an important part of the end of Game of Thrones, surely we want to bring the idea back."
George R.R. Martin's
This
like,
show-
I never said that. I don't know where you got that from.
Yeah.
I said I had a dream once.
All right, I'm gonna try to talk a little less now because like I'm starting to sweat and I'm getting worked up, and I know when I listen to this later, I'm gonna feel like I talked too much and got.
I should have trusted my past self because I was thinking about it today. I remembered, like, if we recorded this episode last season, I would have cut out probably 20 minutes of that. And earlier today, I thought, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let him be himself. And I'm going to let myself be myself, all of us. And now I'm like, that was only 2 years ago. I have not evolved as a human being that much. So now I'm realizing I probably had a pretty good reason for doing what I did. But I'm going to let it fly today.
Okay.
And
someone in the comments, please back me up so I don't feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
Well, speaking of, one thing I thought of earlier that I didn't say, we were talking about heroes. Like, who could be someone that we can root for? You know who's not corrupted yet? Jace.
Jace.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Strapping young lad. Kind of reminds me of Jace from Arcane. Maybe just because I was watching the two kind of near each other. And now here's the great thing. He's got a revenge plot because his younger brother was just killed by Aemond, who's turned into an anime villain. Which was pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the children, they're a hope for just an uncorrupted, pure heroes.
Okay. That does give me something to be optimistic about in terms of someone to root for.
Yeah, and I think we should clarify, like when we were talking about how there's no one to root for, what exactly are we saying? Because I think it's fair to say we all greatly enjoyed season 1, but we were trying to understand why has it not reached the same highs for us as Game of Thrones. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Part of it, Adam, is that we haven't had somebody we can root for. So as much as we can empathize with these characters and we're interested to see where things go, there's also a default empathy for human beings where we don't want war to break out. I mean, I guess we kind of do because it'll be cool to watch. But we're worried about the realm and the innocent people around, or at least I am. I don't know if anybody else is.
I want there to be war, but I want to see like the righteous person like totally win through via slaughter.
Yeah, there's a satisfaction, there's an excitement that comes with victory for a character that you really care about and are rooting for. And it adds something that I'm not sure you can make up for with what we have right now, where I care about their fates, but there's no Jon Snow where I'm like, please don't die. We're not quite there yet, to the same level as Game of Thrones.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean it's not a great show. I do think season 1 was great. All it is an explanation for why I didn't feel the same addiction that I felt to Game of Thrones.
We haven't talked much about Otto, but I just want to call him out as a character I love to watch. The way because he's an actor in real life that has to act as a character who is often acting. Everything he says has a double meaning where he's trying to... Like, one of my favorite examples of it that I called out in the recap is when Viserys is debating if he should marry Lena or not. And the Grand Maester is like, of course you should. It would secure your alliance with the Sea Snake. He's like, well, I'm worried about Rhaenyra. And he's like, what does it matter what Rhaenyra wants? This is your duty as king. And Otto's like, I have to agree, but to marry for duty rather than love. I do not envy your position, king. And I think he's saying that because he wants him to go marry his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
It is funny because he plays this part well. Like, there's a part of me that for a long time wanted to believe that Otto is this admirable, honorable guy.
Yeah.
Well, maybe
he did have me going for a little while.
Well, maybe I mean, is he wrong that Rhaenyra being on the throne could tear the realm apart? And if Aegon goes on the throne, everything would just be as it was, status quo, which you said earlier, Adam, you love the status quo. King doesn't start wars, doesn't end wars, just everything goes on as business as usual. That would be Aegon. And that's what Otto's pulling for. Is it his sense of this is what's right for the realm, and it just happens to be it's his grandson? Or does he want the throne?
But he conspired for all this from the beginning.
And maybe he's lying to himself.
It felt like
right?
ambition. It felt like ambition.
Yeah.
But to your point, does that matter? Like, don't we have to kind of look at what's the result going to be? What do we think will happen because of it?
Daniel, were you about to say you have to go?
Yeah, I
was gonna. Yeah, I'm gonna go in a couple minutes.
Okay.
Just getting late. But I was gonna finish the thought on Otto. Is he manufactured this whole situation, right? Viserys easily would not have remarried and may not have had a son, and Rhaenyra then succeeding to the throne might have been okay, but he manufactured this entire situation and kept pushing it every step of the way closer to the brink.
Yeah, that's true. Though I bet even if you were to read his mind, I don't know if you would see that. You might see him lying to himself, saying, yes, I manipulated events, but I'm doing what's right for the realm.
But when he pushed Alicent to go to his throne room.
Well, he needed him to...
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I guess he could have just married Lena and then had a son that way. Damn it.
Also, what about the fact that Otto was probably poisoning his alleged best friend for like 30 years?
That's true. All right, you guys make some solid points. It's just fun.
I like him. He is kind of like he's sort of like the Littlefinger of this series.
Yeah.
And
I really
like Littlefinger for
the White Worm.
I thought that was Daniel. So I do think that makes him a really like interesting character.
Yeah, he's just delightful to watch.
I like the machinations.
Yes.
Right,
anything else? Any final thoughts, before you go, Daniel? Give me 30 seconds. Final thoughts. Wrap this up. Not joking. Say something real, like really impressive and something that'll get people excited for season 2. We didn't talk about that at all. What are you excited to see in season 2?
So I think what's really exciting about season 2 is season 1 was a small story focused on these characters. And now we're about to break into the big, epic Game of Thrones type story that season 2 is going to be. We have a big cast of characters. We have all of Westeros they're going to be fighting over. I'm really excited. And I think we have potentially a Stark-like character to root for in Jace. So I'm really excited.
And I should say, by the way, we don't watch Next Time On previews. There are trailers out there. I haven't watched a single one.
It's a safe podcast if you're like us.
That's right. All right, Daniel, you want to scram, and then me and Adam could play us out?
All right. Thanks, guys.
What does that mean to play us out? All right, bye, Daniel.
See ya.
Okay, Gil.
Right, so
Can I answer that question too?
Yeah, please.
Oh, wait, did you have a funny comment to make like after Daniel left?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought you were gonna be like, "Wow, it's just got really pleasant in here."
No, I thought you were about to start talking as if he was gone while he was still here. So I was like preemptively.
Oh yeah, you were like, "Don't say anything yet." Okay, so to answer the same question you asked, like, what am I excited about for season 2? This series is based on a book called Fire and Blood. We've only seen a little fire and a little blood. I think like we're about to actually see full-blown war, and some of the coolest episodes in Game of Thrones were when the wars are really escalating. Remember Battle of the Bastards?
Yes.
And that was season 5, so it was already like the show was starting to become a little weak in the knees. But that battle was incredible. Who directed that? Isn't there like one of the people who directed a lot of episodes? He's like Sapochnik.
I think that's right. And then yeah, it is Sapochnik. And I
Miguel
think he
Sapochnik.
left House of the Dragon because he wasn't really supposed to be involved. He was just helping to get it set up.
Yeah.
And then he was like, you know what? I'll stick around for season 1. And then he was like, okay, now I'm out of here. I want to go make some Star Wars movies.
Because this
That
would be
didn't,
a
by the way,
really
it didn't
good
really
time
happen.
for
I was making fun of
Benny Offenweiss. Yeah.
But I do believe
That gave me immense schadenfreude was when their Star Wars thing never happened.
Yeah. But he did. Okay, so part of that was joking, but Sapochnik did leave after season 1.
Okay, so I hope they have someone good to fill his shoes, because if this season is going to involve as much carnage and war as I'm expecting, they could really use someone like him. So I'm very excited about that, because it's just cool. And one thing Game of Thrones did well was, there was a lot of mindless violence, but there was also a lot of meaningful and purposeful violence. And you and I, we like a lot of Quentin Tarantino movies. We like, we don't like all action, but we do tend to like violence on screen when it feels like there's something to think about behind it, and when it feels like purpose driven, especially when it feels revenge driven.
I mean, exactly.
And to see that on the level of a war could be really great TV.
Yeah, especially in a war involving dragons. There's a great moment in the Black Council, the season finale, where Rhaenyra and the council are kind of going through their allies. How many troops do they have? And someone interrupts. They're like, can we cut to the chase? What matters is dragons. How many dragons do we have? How many dragons do they have?
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's undercut slightly.
They're like nuclear weapons.
They're like, they could just spit nuclear bombs out of their mouth.
Yeah.
Now, it's undercut slightly by the fact that the reason Daemon and Corlys struggled so much in the Stepstones is because the crab feeder and all his men just hid in caves, so the fire couldn't reach them. And so I don't know if you remember, but Daemon had to run out and kind of draw them out of the cave so they could all get burned.
Yeah.
But to see a war with several dragons on both sides, and there are some wild dragons out there too. There are eggs, so both of them will probably be trying to get more on their side. The absolute destruction we're going to see. It's going to be really exciting. Yeah, we like meaningful action when just all the dynamics of drama of everyone's manipulating each other. They're trying to kill each other. That's when it all happens, almost on fast forward in a war sequence. So it's very exciting. That's what it's all building up to.
It's just going to accelerate. Now, in Game of Thrones, that series started in a world that hadn't seen dragons for like 300 years or something. And so when Daenerys finally had her dragons, there was no one alive who had ever trained a dragon before. It was all like tradition that was passed down in these small groups and like cults, basically. So we didn't get to see the dragons play out to their like biggest extent, or like their highest capacity. We saw like an amateur approach, and it definitely showed in terms of how easily she got them killed. But this time around, we're going to see dragons being wielded by experts, Yeah,
I wonder if I forgot, but they invented that big arrow where you could sort of like one-shot kill dragons.
Yeah,
I wonder if that's going to come into it. Wasn't it that like pirate guy in the final season?
Oh, yeah. What was his name? He was awful.
Yeah.
In the books, he's fascinating. He's really cool in the books.
He was like a leather jacket wearing dude that just stepped out of like an 80s
like a
action
glam
movie.
rock like musician. Yeah. I'm forgetting his name now. That's probably poor form, but in the end, he's the one who's like, I F to the queen,
Yeah. Yeah, I should say, this was a really freewheeling kind of just look back episode.
Yeah.
We, at least last season, we did a lot of research between episodes.
Yeah, we were on top of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So don't
This is more just to like get in the spirit of it.
Yeah,
but that's like Gil. Gil, you know a lot. Like,
I know a lot.
You've been
about
guiding the
season 1.
discussion. Yeah. You've been doing more guiding of the discussion, but if it came down to just like raw knowledge and like just straight facts about what happened in season 1, like you're probably pretty high up there.
Yeah.
Um,
If that pirate guy was in season 1 of House of the Dragon, his
Yeah,
name
then
would
you
be
would
like,
know his
like
name.
that. I would know it.
Rest assured.
Yeah.
And one other thing to look forward to in season 2, which you guys touched on a little bit at the mention of Stark. If you think back, like season 1 happened in a very small space. Like I mostly pictured like the inner halls of the like the castle, like King's Landing.
Yeah, the Red Keep.
basically.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
The
I
Red Keep.
remember in our first, I think, or instant take even, you said that's one of the things you already miss about the original series, Game of Thrones. It felt a lot more epic, literally because you're just seeing so many different
Yeah.
locations.
I mean, there was like an entire season that just followed Arya on just traveling the roads, you know, anonymously with like Hot Pie and some of her other friends. And there was a whole season that just her plot was just getting from point A to point B, and it made the world feel huge. And you got to see a lot of stuff outdoors and come across a lot of like the kind of the lower echelons of that world. Whereas this has been very constrained. You do see some scenes from within the city, you know, like when
Damon sneaks
Damon,
Rhaenyra
yeah,
out for the
Damon
night
takes Rhaenyra out and
to
into
the
like
bowels
the
of a pleasure
slums and,
den.
so to speak. And so we see stuff like that, but overall, it feels much smaller. That's not a criticism against it, but I find myself starting to feel a little claustrophobic, and I don't think it can stay that way with the wars coming up. So I'm excited to see a more expansive view of things and to start to see different kingdoms in different parts of King's Landing or different parts of Westeros.
Yeah,
Anyway,
agreed.
what about you?
All of the
know?
above.
Yeah, that's not satisfying.
Well, I mean, I should have had an answer prepared. Well, you guys did take a lot of what I was
didn't.
thinking. I was thinking about how but you talked first. But the fact that it is going to expand the world a bit, the fact that we're getting to the conclusion to the thing it's all been building up to, the wars and everything. So I'm excited to see all that.
Wait, how many seasons is this going to be?
They have announced that. I forget if it was 3 or 4. How many seasons will House of the Dragon have? 4 full 10-episode seasons is what George R.R. Martin believed, but he's already wrong because season 2 is only 8 episodes, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, but it won't be 8 seasons.
Yeah.
I'm excited to learn more about the kids. I'll say that because so far they haven't been full-fledged characters. They're just starting to become that. Obviously, Aemond is the one who stands out the most. Jace is an appealing character because you see him working hard. The last few episodes, like he is trying to learn history. He is the one that suggests him and Luke fly out to deliver the message themselves to the lords and the kings they need help from. I guess not kings, the lords they need help from, instead of sending ravens. So he's going to be in a really interesting spot. Not only did Aemond kill his younger brother, but it's kind of his fault. Because again, they were going to send ravens, and Jace was like, me and Luke should go. If we bring dragons and send the message ourselves, it's going to have adds a whole other level. It shows how serious we are, and it reminds people of our power. We have dragons. So he's in an interesting spot, and I'm interested to see, I'm just repeating myself now. I want to see the children develop as full-fledged characters and see where that goes.
Yeah, I guess Jace has not just a vengeance, but a desire for redemption or to correct or make up for something he feels is his fault.
Yeah, it's also going to be interesting to see Rhaenyra and Alicent had made steps toward mending their friendship. It seems like that's impossible now. But now I am so excited to see the next time the two of them interact. Because it might be a while. They're going to be commanding their forces, I imagine, from the safety of their various castles. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to be building up, I hope, toward a conversation between them. And I'm very excited to see how that goes.
Now, do you think at this point the gloves are off, there's no shred of their friendship left? Or do you think once let's say they get a chance to sit essentially face to face alone away from everyone else, uh, what do you think that would be like?
I think the problem is by the time they sit down, Aemond killing Luke will be one of many horrible things that have happened between them.
Mhm.
I think it's just going to keep escalating. I just can't imagine there's going to be a shred of friendship left. Unless one of them is dying, and then their dying breaths, it can be like Spider-Man 3, where he's like, friend. And then he dies.
Or like Viserys going, my love.
Right. I remember there being debate over who he was talking about. Like, was he talking about Alicent? I think he was talking about Emma, his wife.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I'm excited for all that. I can't wait. I can't believe. It's funny because I said it's a pet peeve of mine when people are like, I can't believe it's already been 2 years. Because I think anytime you remember one particular point in time, you automatically compare that point to this point. You're like, wow, I can't believe how long it's been. You have to remember all the stuff that happened in between. But having said that, like, man, I can't believe it's been 2 years. And now we're 5 days away. By the time people are listening to this, probably only 4 days away from the season 2 premiere.
I'm getting excited for all of my fire and blood earlier. I actually feel it, that it's going to be cool to be back in this world.
Yeah,
and
I'm
I
excited.
I do feel more confident this time around. I think that they can stick the landing.
I think so, because as you said earlier, part of the reason you're more confident in this show is because they have the source material. It's a complete story. But the thing to remember is that the source material is not a narrative.
I know,
Fire and Blood,
it's like an expository.
It's written, I said it in the recap, it's written as a scholarly account, like an encyclopedia. Mm-hmm. So they're filling in a lot of details. And they've already shown...
it's meant to be read as the way history is written, meaning it's not guaranteed to be 100% accurate.
Right. So they're filling in a lot of details. They're crafting characters and narratives that weren't there. And they've already shown they can do it. So I'm psyched for season 2. Critics have already seen it. Reviews are great. I haven't looked into any of the details of them because, again, I don't want to know any details of what's coming. But I just know the general impression is it's very good. All right, should we officially... That's the end of the retrospective component. And now let's go into the post-show.
Let's do it.
All right, so what is Talking Targaryen going to look like this season? It's not going to look like what you just heard. If you even hear it, if I deem this releasable. I'm just kidding, Adam. I thought that was... I'm just kidding. It's a joke. Yeah.
I'd rather you just...
just cut that line.
Yeah.
No, so when we first started this podcast, we were following the Sawcast format, where we did a live instant take right after the episode. Then later in the week, we did a full take where we would recap the episode beat by beat and give our commentary.
Yeah.
Okay, then we decided, okay, forget the full take. We're just going to do the instant take, followed by a scripted 30-minute breakdown of the episode. Remember that week, Adam?
Yeah.
It didn't really work out too well. That episode got taken down by HBO within like 48 hours. Who knew if you put 60% of the footage from an episode on YouTube, they don't like it. So then we said, let's get rid of the instant take, get rid of the scripted thing, get rid of the full take. And we did what we called at the time a medium take, where we weren't on camera. We didn't do a beat by beat recap of the episode. We just kind of scrolled through the episode and had a kind of freewheeling conversation about it. We weren't even on camera. All you saw were the kind of screenshots of the episode.
Mm-hmm. And we were just seeking through it, yeah.
Yeah, the show, I'll be honest, House of the Dragon, or Talking Targaryen, existed on a razor's edge. A lot of behind-the-scenes drama. I was like Viserys. Just wanted to make everybody happy, but I didn't have the guts to be king and just say, we're not doing the show. So I went along.
Well, that's true. You had a lot of uncertainty.
Well, and not because I didn't want to do it, but because I had a lot of personal things going on. Not in a weird way. Like, don't be like, oh, Gil's got like a dark side. Just like literally
No,
personal.
you're not doing the YouTuber thing where you're like making a video about how you're not going to make as many videos anymore because you have anxiety.
No,
And then you continue releasing videos anyway as if nothing happened.
Yeah, here, let me give an example. This is not what happened, but it's an example of the sort of thing I could be talking about. Let's say I was moving and I had to pack all my things and it was going to take a while. That's an example of the sort of thing I'm talking about.
It's tough to plan a long podcast that involves a lot of physical setup and lighting and audio, stuff.
Oh, that was the other thing. Yeah, well, it's
on top of having to deal with something like a move.
Yes, I don't even know why I'm being so cagey about it.
Honestly, yeah, I'm not even certain what you're talking about.
I'll tell you after. After. But I mean, part of the reason we did the medium take where we weren't on camera anymore is because setting up, if you have a just permanent setup, like a studio in your basement, then you can just go down there, you turn the equipment on. I don't currently have a situation where I can do that. So we would always have to put all the equipment back up, reset up all the lighting, put up sound blankets. And it would take like 2 hours just to get that looking right.
We were wiped by the time we were ready to record.
Exactly. And we were all mad at each other because inevitably one person would worry more about the lighting than everybody else. So
I wonder which one.
There'd be this quiet resentment.
It was me.
There was one podcast that we recorded. It wasn't Talking Targaryen. And I remember Daniel said afterward that he just felt this tension between the two of you. I think it probably came down to the lighting. Like you were worrying about it way too much. And then maybe he was like, it's fine. And you were like, it's not fine. And I went back and watched. We never released it. I think we will release it at some point. But I went back and watched it. And I can see the two of you just staring at each other, just staring daggers at each other. So a lot of drama behind the scenes. And we tried to find ways to just... So it wasn't just the personal stuff. But I was also on a deadline because I was working on that Halloween retrospective, the 4-hour Halloween retrospective at the same time.
Worth it.
And I could already see it's not going to be out by Halloween, which was a major problem because I did release it like 5 days into November and it completely flopped. And I mean, I spent like 2 months of my life and it had a budget. Like we had sets, I bought specific equipment for it and it completely flopped. And maybe it wouldn't have come out late if we had canceled Talking Targaryen. That's one of the sacrifices I made. But to try and do everything at the same time, it was becoming impossible. But the happy ending, by the way, the Halloween retrospective, the following Halloween, picked up a ton of views. And
massively.
Well, and that's a great example of why it's hard to prioritize things. Because when we started Saulcast, it was a hobby, completely for fun on the side. But one take has turned into my full-time job. So sometimes I got to put my business cap on. Okay. And
that's a nice cap you got there.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I got to decide, like, what am I going to put my time into? And that Halloween video got more views than all of Talking Targaryen and all of Saulcast combined. All right. So that's why, okay. So what's the format going to be?
Are you saying we're not doing it anymore?
Yeah, I'm doing a Nightmare on Elm Street retrospective. So there's no time.
Thanks for tuning in to the final episode of Talking Targaryen.
No. Well, here's the beautiful thing. We used to be roommates. And so we felt compelled to record in person. Of course we would. We're in the same building together.
Yeah, which added... It made things so much harder because then you have to think about how to frame two people in the camera at the same time.
Yeah. Let alone sometimes it was 4 of us. We had to frame 4 of us, and it would look ridiculous because I'd be so far from the camera. And then whoever was sitting closest to it, everyone's like, oh my God, look at his bicep. Just because the warping of the camera, because they're closest to it. And then I would look like the scrum. I mean, why is Gil half the size?
You did look
of all of his
like a vampire, too.
Yeah.
And I don't think you were that pale. I just think like the way the lighting was, it just looked weird.
It just looked weird. So the beautiful thing is we don't live together anymore. So now, like, of course we're going to do it remotely.
I do miss living together.
I do. And then also, even during today's episode, I saw it. It's like we talk over each other because it's remote. There was a ton of instances of that. I don't know if you picked up on that.
I still did that a lot back then too.
That's true. But now it's not just you doing it. Now everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's remote, it does make it a lot easier. I can leave this microphone here most of the time, I got a light back there. It's not moving. So, and then Adam's like, I'm not even going to be on camera. It's just easier that way. So we're going to make it a light
I'm
touch.
doing you all a favor.
Yeah. Trust me, I saw him. He looks worse than Viserys in episode 8. And that's the episode he died in. So
what's the deal?
Well, here's what I'm thinking. Full take. No instant takes, but we do the full take. So we'll recap it beat by beat. We'll go back to the classic format, basically. Recap the episode beat by beat and comment throughout. But we're just not going to do the instant take. Now, we could do it sometimes. Like, I think maybe for the finale.
Like a special episode.
Yeah, we could do. We haven't done a watch party in a while where you go live before the episode.
Those are fun.
It's a lot of fun.
We can get Peter Dyseth.
Yeah, we can promise you. So, yeah, we're going to do the full takes every week. No instant takes, except maybe special occasions. And a lot of that's going to depend on you guys.
Hey,
not you.
I'll say,
I mean the listeners.
Oh, you mean the audience? Oh, okay.
Yeah, if each
a
of you,
lot is going to depend on you guys.
Because if nobody watches, I can't. Look at this. All right, you see this? That's my business hat. All right. Do I work on the Nightmare on Elm Street retrospective, or do I spend 3 hours rewatching the episode of House? Why does it take me 3 hours to rewatch the episode? Because I'm taking notes, like copious notes.
Right.
So I'm prepared to talk on Talking Targaryen.
Right. And you're not saying you need this to, like, I don't think you care whether or not the podcast earns you an income. I think what you care about is, do you get the satisfaction of feeling like we're doing it for people who want to hear it?
Yeah.
And who are going to interact and, like, make it more interesting.
I remember when we did the finale, I just re-listened to part of our finale live stream. And at the beginning of it, I gave the whole same spiel. I was like, so we used to do the instant takes. We did the full takes. We tried the medium takes. And now we're trying a new format where we wait until 3 weeks after the episode airs to talk about it. Because we waited so long, it just didn't come together. Yeah. And someone commented, they were like, hey, just some helpful feedback. Like, probably if you released it closer to after the episode air, I bet you'd get more views. And I'm like, yeah,
wow,
I know.
Why didn't we think of that?
Yeah. But the problem
I was going to say, I think, no, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, if we do, I like the plan, doing just the full take, maybe instant take for special occasions. I know it depends more on, like, me and the other brothers than it does on you, but the sooner we can get the full take out, the better.
Yeah, I was thinking we aim for Wednesday. Look, if we can pull it together for Tuesday, I mean, that would be beautiful, but I'm skeptical. Yeah. That would mean recording Monday, basically. Then we get it out Tuesday. Yeah, a lot of it's going to depend on you guys. We'll figure out the schedule. I mean, and that's who's going to be on the podcast. I mean, ideally, it's basically there's three options. Adam, Daniel, one. Right? They're the ones who have been on. It's not going to be all four of us every time. That's going to be the goal. And if it turns out one person is not available that week or two people aren't available, then it'll just be me and Adam or me and Daniel or me and Alun, God forbid.
Now, I mean, my goal strongly is to be on every single episode. The only thing that will stop me from being on is if I'm literally at work at the time.
If they mention the Song of Ice and Fire again, you're not going to bother. You're checked out.
Yeah. They're on thin ice when it comes to that.
Yeah.
But the fact that if we're not doing it live, that means there's some flexibility built in around when we record. So I don't think it's asking too much of myself to be on every episode. And right. I'll regret missing an episode because I have a lot of fun with it.
There were a couple
episodes. It makes
episodes,
the show that much more enjoyable for me.
I missed an episode. I wasn't on an episode last season. The first time ever. It was just Daniel and Alun. What a pair that was. It was an instant take. I was
That's
at a
like
wedding.
when Job and Tobias teamed up to start a business on Arrested Development.
I was at a wedding. So I was listening in though, like at the table where we were eating. And as a joke, I thought I would give a big super chat. I was like, where's the handsome guy that's normally there? I gave like $100. And I was like, what's the difference? It's out of my left pocket into my right pocket. And I forgot that YouTube takes like 30%.
Like,
So, well, but it's a business write-off. So $30, you can. So basically, I spent $20 on it.
yeah.
Worth it.
Yeah.
Logistics. It'll be posted onto the One Take podcast channel. If you're audio only, find it on any podcast app. Just search Talkin' Targaryen. If we ever do a special live stream, the live stream will be on the main channel. But after that, it'll be reposted onto the One Take podcast channel. So if you don't care about live streams, but you want to hear everything we say, if you're subscribed to the One Take podcast channel, you will hear and see it all. If you're subscribed to the podcast feed, you will hear it all. The live streams and the full episodes will be posted there. But if you ever want to join live, if we go live, make sure you're subscribed to the main One Take channel. Link will be in the description and the show notes. Not that complicated.
Yeah.
All right, last thing I'll say. I have been trying to get a regular just One Take podcast going where we talk about movie news, TV news, anything we've watched, and just other stuff, just fun stuff. Like I do a live stream on Tony from Hack the Movies. I go onto his channel once a month when he does a monthly wrap up, and we just
I
talk.
thought you meant you do a live stream about him.
Well, kind of. I'm kind of getting there. So Tony, Hack the Movies, he has me on once a month along with a few other people, kind of a panel discussion of all the big movies and shows that came out that month. So on the One Take podcast, we've started doing this. The day after, whenever I'm on that live stream, we do a play-by-play recap where I look back, what could I have done better? What could I have said differently? And we kind of prepare for the next time. So you can get like, if you need more, you get like a 20-minute breakdown after each live stream.
Just so that we can watch you in real time overanalyze your own performance.
Exactly. So doing Talkin' Targaryen will probably mean that doesn't come out as regularly, but I'm going to try and sprinkle them throughout, and they'll be on the same One Take podcast channel. Check it out, and I hope you enjoy it. All right, let's wrap it up there, Adam.
It's good to be back.
It is. This is good.
Yeah,
I feel good about this.
I'm really pumped about it. And I will say, in terms of my work limitations, I recently got through what will be some of the busiest months in years for me. So my number one goal is to start potting again more often.
Awesome. I love it.
And for those of you who found, who were like, it's really unpleasant to listen to this guy, I'm just out of practice. It'll get better.
How about the negativity? Are we going to expect that every week?
No. Well, I'll look, to some extent, that's the role I serve, because I think you and Daniel are afraid to get negative about stuff, because you just want to keep good vibes overall and seem like just generally positive people.
And naturally, on the full take, you're going to hear me talk more because I'll be the one recapping.
Yeah. But again, even then, it'll stay fairly objective. It won't have as much to do. I think when it comes to your opinions on YouTube, it's like the old saying, like, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything. Don't say it at all. That's kind of roughly the guideline that you follow. But especially for a format like this, you need a voice that will call out the stuff that's worthy of it. I think I just need to learn when it's, I've made my point and now I'm just going around in circles.
Right. Don't feed a fed horse. All right. Well, there you go. That was Talkin' Targaryen. And I hope you enjoyed this look back at season 1. And you can look forward to weekly episodes. I already said all this. We're going to do the full take every week.
I can't wait.
All right. So did we have a sign off for this?
Did we
Oh,
say
yeah, yeah, we
Gil.
did.
I'm
Ready?
Adam.
I know. I just remembered this. Yeah. I'm Gil.
I'm Adam.
Dracarys. All right. You guys ready?
I'm ready.
For what?